Cameras caught Kirk Frost having a violent outburst that left Rasheeda crying and everyone in shock just hours after it was leaked. The video is already going viral on social media, with fans demanding explanations and producers desperately trying to control the story, but the damage may already be done. It all happened on what should have been just another scene between the longtime couple during a normal filming day. But something happened that no one, not even Rasheeda, the cast, or the crew, expected. Although Rasheeda has not publicly stated her feelings, those close to her believe she is devastated and that this controversy could jeopardize not only Kirk's career, but the series as a whole. They raised their voices, accusations were made, and in a move that sent the internet into a frenzy, Kirk sprang at Rasheeda in a manner that nobody had anticipated from the man she had stood by for years. Fans are now curious as to what actually transpired behind the scenes. People who knew Rita could see the emotions simmering just beneath the surface as she sat in a corner trying to remain calm while looking through her phone. The entire crew could sense the cold energy between them. There was a problem. The love and hip-hop set was bustling with the usual controlled chaos. Cameras in place, helpers running around, makeup artists doing last-minute touch-ups under the blinding glare of the production lights, with a top face and a clenched jaw that seemed to be holding back a storm. The audience didn't know that Kirk had found texts on Rasheeda's phone just before the cameras started rolling. Although they weren't flirtatious or scandalous, she was privately ranting to a friend about Kirk's most recent betrayal. "I don't know how much longer I can pretend this marriage is okay," she wrote. Kirk noticed it. He remained silent and simply waited for the scene to start after walking to his assigned spot on the set, but he was boiling inside. They were supposed to film a simple sequence that involved a conversation about their son's academic situation, but Kirk was unable to pretend. He went on a diet instead of following the script when the director called for action. "That's your true feelings driving me behind my back while feigning for the cameras." His tone was low and sharp, startling Rita, who looked up the script and asked, "What are you talking about?" Her voice was already breaking as she asked. "I saw everything and moved in her direction, not sure if this was just dramatic acting or real life unfolding in front of them." The crew paused, the air felt heavy, and there was silence. The director tried to cut the scene at this point, indicating a pause, but Kirk persisted because his feelings had taken over. "I have to vent to someone, Kirk," Rita said, rising as Rosita's eyes widened, "and you glanced over my phone." Kirk yelled, "Don't pretend you're innocent. You've been grinning in my face while disparaging me. That isn't real, Rita, and I've had enough of false. I can no longer contain all of this. You're never present. You tell lies. You are dishonest. I am simply drowning." Those words pushed Kirk over the edge, and in a single quick motion, he raised his hand. No one could have predicted what happened next, as everyone watched in what seemed like slow motion as his palm made contact with Rita's cheek. The studio echoed with the sharp slap, and the air was filled with the sound of it. A clipboard was dropped, and Rita's face turned away as she stood stunned and motionless. One hand slowly rose to touch the spot where he had struck her, and then everything exploded. "Security!" cried. The assistant director rushed forward, and one of the sound technicians hurried over to Rosita and gently led her away. Kirk just stood there, panting, looking as though he was still in shock at what he had just done, but it was done, and it couldn't be undone. The cameras kept recording out of surprise, and unintentionally the video was shot from a number of angles. Kirk Frost, a longtime cast member, was caught on camera hitting his wife in a moment that would go down in history. Word quickly spread from the set that someone had already received a negative message from a crew member. Kirk hit Rita, and the chain reaction began right away. Within minutes, social media exploded, and when she was taken to her dressing room, fans couldn't believe what they were hearing was not something that anyone wanted to believe, but the words kept coming out. Everyone had a different version of what happened, and none of them gave Kirk a good picture. Meanwhile, Rena sat quietly in her dressing room. Her cheeks flushed and her makeup smudged, and she didn't cry anymore. Instead, she was filled with astonishment, treachery, and a strange sense of relief, as if something that had been hidden for too long had finally come to light. "He really did it," she whispered to her stylist. "He struck me hard right in front of everyone." Outside the door, the producers were in a panic, unable to agree on what to do. Some wanted the entire shoot to be stopped, while others said they had to comment before the video was leaked. However, it was clear that it would not remain confidential because it had already been recorded on a phone and that the hazy foam film would be the first thing to be posted online. even though the network's cameras had captured it in high definition. Kirk, on the other hand, had left the set without offering an apology. Justification: he simply left with a rigid stance and an incomprehensible expression. He didn't speak to anyone, not even his supervisor, and he just got into his car and drove away. The first footage surfaced online the next morning, showing Kirk Frost slapping Rasheeda in an unmistakably unsteady and blurry manner. Fans were incensed, demanding that he be canceled, arrested, or fired. Celebrities started to voice their opinions, and there was no excuse. One rapper tweeted, "Not a single apology. I grew up watching these, and they're just disgusting." An R&B artist said on social media, "I'm sad today." Even Mama Scott, the show's executive producer, couldn't keep quiet, saying, "Violence has no place in our production," in a vague but clearly targeted statement. There were rumors that Kirk had been suspended indefinitely, while others claimed that VH1 was considering canceling the entire season. Rasheeda was silent during this time, but it was brief because she only posted one image to Instagram a few hours later, showing a black screen without a caption. Nevertheless, her fans showered her with support in the comments section, saying things like, "You were loved by us. Go away from him. You're worthy of better." The outside world was unaware of this humiliation, rage, heartache, and misunderstanding, and Rasheeda wasn't sure if she wanted to file charges or stay married. Everything had changed, and that was all she knew for herself and everyone around her. This was only the beginning, as the events on that set were only a small part of a much darker, bigger drama that had been simmering for years behind closed doors. The pressure to speak up and give her side of the story increased as the love poured in. In addition to bruising Rasheeda's cheek, Kirk's slap destroyed years of devotion, trust, and silent compromise. They had previously been filmed fighting and had seen them through constant rumors, emotional collapses, and infidelity scandals, but now that the truth was out in the open, there was no turning back. The world witnessed Kirk Frost's furious outburst, and the consequences were just beginning after the storm. There was a brief period of silence behind the scenes, but the harm was far more severe than anyone could have predicted. Was special, it was more than just a television drama, and it was difficult to ignore the pure violence captured on camera in real time. Rasheeda sat by herself in her home, and her team told her to take some time to heal and stay away from the media and social media, but she wasn't getting better right away. Instead, memories of the many times she had forgotten to protect and forgive Kirk, even though she knew deep down that he wasn't worthy, came flooding back. It felt like everything she had been hiding for years had been exposed to the public, and it was painful even more as a result. Her phone was constantly buzzing with messages from friends, family, and cast members. Everyone had something to say. Some were checking in, others were surprised, but too few admitted they weren't surprised. One cast member wrote in one message, "We've seen the signs for years. It was just a question of time." Rasheeda stared at that text for minutes, wondering how long she had been hoping for things to change. How many times had she told herself that staying was what love meant? Kirk was hiding out at a friend's condo across town, avoiding the cameras and the chaos. He hadn't called Rasheeda and hadn't offered any kind of apology. Instead, he kept replaying the incident in his head, trying to make it seem like a response rather than an attack that she had provoked him. He told himself that she had overreacted and that it was only an error, but the truth was clear anyhow. No matter how many times he tried to rephrase it, he had gone too far and was unable to turn back his phone. Mama Scott was the one who didn't answer, and then it rang again before a text message said, "We need to talk. This is a serious matter." Kirk paced the room, throwing the phone aside, aware that the network was watching, that the video would be reviewed, that legal counsel would be consulted, and that statements would be prepared. He also knew that his reputation, what little he had left, was rapidly deteriorating. Meanwhile, the internet had exploded, and old videos of Kirk demeaning Rasheeda were unearthed by admirers. They investigating his tone, body language, and past arguments for hours. Hashtags like #FireKirkFrost and #JusticeForA gained popularity. The story was covered by news outlets as a reality TV scandal that turned into a real-life tragedy, and a panel debated whether VH1 should cancel Kirk's contract. Insiders who were interviewed by podcast hosts indicated that Kirk had previously become combative off-camera. In the midst of all of this, Rasheeda's mother suddenly entered the spotlight, not holding back, and was renowned for fiercely defending her daughter. Her eyes were burning as she said, "You can't build love on pain. I told her years ago, and now I have a peak." He touched her with his hands, and her words resonated on social media like a rallying cry, with supporters swarming around her, describing her as the voice that was desperately needed at the time. Rita watched the video in silence and sobbed because although she hesitated, something inside of her refused to give up. Perhaps it was love or fear, or perhaps she didn't know who she was without Kirk after all the years of standing up for him. The network released a statement the following day, saying, "The Kirk and Rasheeda Frost incident is known to VH1. We do not support any kind of violence we're taking action to." She knew it was true, not because of what her mother had said and she had ignored, but because of the warnings, her intuition, and the restless nights about what a marriage turned into a jail. The executives were in a difficult situation when Kirk finally spoke up despite the storm with a poor video that was uploaded to the story without an apology. His voice was tired and defensive as he began. "People only see what the cameras show. Every story has. Protect our cast's health and safety. It was ambiguous, secure corporate." Fans weren't happy and demanded action, demanding that Kirk be taken out for good. Sponsors began removing advertisements from the program. The majority of the responses were angry, with one admirer saying, "You didn't apologize. You were just trying to look good. We witnessed the slap." Another said, "We witnessed the terror. Don't deceive us." There are two sides to it. I regret what happened. I love my spouse, and I had no intention of hurting her, but the damage was already done. Ree didn't respond in public, but in private, she was preparing. Her team had called a lawyer to discuss her options instead of suing Kirk, and she was considering leaving the show entirely because she was tired of pretending that she was tired of enduring a story that had become a nightmare. However, as the days passed, another twist emerged. Raw, unedited footage from before the slap was revealed, showing Kirk pacing angrily backstage. Mumbling to himself, "I'm done playing the good guy, and she's going to learn today." The revelation confirmed that the fan slap was not an unplanned outburst. Rather, it had been planned long before the cameras caught him spinning. After this realization, everyone changed, including the cast members who had tried to help Kirk, turning away from him to minimize his appearance. Producers also began re-editing episodes, raising the possibility that he would be completely cut. Rita remained mostly silent throughout it all, but her strength began to show in various ways. She streamed live from her store while laughing with the staff, smiling as she shared pictures of herself with her children. She never once spoke to Kirk, but her message was clear that she wasn't damaged, not at this time. However, there were still questions. Would she return to the program? Would she confront Kirk directly, or would she leave for good? The world watched, speculated, and waited, and Kirk, who was once a prominent figure in hip-hop and love, he was left feeling abandoned, rejected, and unsure of whether his empire would survive the fallout. And this was just the beginning. Raz's quiet became more noticeable as the dust was beginning to settle, and every tweet she sent without Kirk was taken as a declaration without him. Her smiles, however, began to symbolize survival. Beneath those brief moments of power, however, was a woman still coming to terms with the betrayal of a lifetime. Fans appreciated her strength, but they were oblivious to the times she cried alone, the times she questioned every decision she made, or, in the meantime, Kirk's situation was becoming worse faster than he could handle. The network companies that had previously supported him stopped airing the footage that showed him, and some of his longtime business associates quietly announced that they were re-evaluating their relationship with him. Kirk was being destroyed piece by piece, and no one was publicly defending him. However, Kirk wasn't particularly hurt by the criticism from the media or the company losses. Instead, he expected Rita's silence to be the cause, that she would strike out, possibly even going live and shouting his name into thin air. But she just continued, and that felt worse somehow. He realized that she was no longer upset that she had finished Kirk, but that he couldn't let go so easily. In a desperate attempt to change the plot, he pleaded for a sit-down with one of the show's producers, demanding that I present my case before they permanently ban me. To be clear, the producer wasn't sure there were risks, but drama was lucrative, and Kirk was the pinnacle of drama, desperate, unfiltered, and rejected. A few days later, the cameras rolled again, but this time in a studio that was closed under the lights. Kirk sat with his forehead dripping with sweat as he began. "I grew up in a chaotic environment," he said. "Perhaps that's why I make so many mistakes. Perhaps that's why I messed up with Rasheeda." He dabbed at his face, but he never imagined it would go this far. He's not sorry for what he did, one fan wrote on social media, and he apologized for getting caught at the same time. In a mysterious tweet, Kirk's oldest daughter from a previous relationship wrote, He's been like this. The video was not damage control. Rather, it fueled another fire, which viewers were able to see through his statements. They called it performative manipulative. It was like releasing a torrent, and you're just now discovering it. Each new revelation felt like a puzzle piece that Rita watched from a distance as other family members, an ex-friend, and even a former romantic partner came forward to disclose years of emotional instability, control issues, and poisonous behavior that had been too long hidden behind the cameras. The subtle manipulation, the gaslighting, and the way Kirk always managed to shift the responsibility began to make sense. Had been carrying shame that wasn't hers for years, but she was now putting it down one piece at a time. The show's producers met behind closed doors to discuss turning the drama into a special episode, which would bring Rita and Kirk together for a live televised altercation. The idea would be huge, and the buzz would never stop. The problem was that Rita didn't want anything to do with it. Her team rejected her request right away because she wasn't ready and didn't want to give Kirk a chance to change his life. Producers wouldn't budge, so they reached out to me again with an offer of full editing rights, creative control, and a substantial payment. Rita felt torn between wanting to keep quiet and knowing that this might be the last chapter in her life, a chance to end the book the way she wanted. She considered it for days before agreeing, but with the caveat that Kirk wouldn't know about her agreement until the filming was finished. Kirk arrived on set expecting a solo segment that day. When the cameras started rolling, Kirk opened her mouth to reply, but Rasheeda held up her hand and said, "No," muttering, "You've said enough. You listen now." He had rehearsed sentences in his head to sound vulnerable and apologetic, but his mouth dried up when he saw Rasheeda sitting across from him, calm and unflappable. She didn't smile or say hello to him. She just waited. "I gave you everything, my patience, my devotion, and my love. Even if you weren't deserving," she began in a firm voice as the studio fell silent. "What did you do to? I stood up for us, and I looked foolish because of you. I was hurt by you not once, but repeatedly." Kirk's head dropped, and when everyone on the planet saw what I've been dealing with, you were still unable to accept true responsibility. You were the victim, and you offered justifications. Kirk tried to interrupt me. "Pain too? No," she cut in. "You have no right to hurt me and then complain about your suffering. That isn't love. Control is that, and I finished it." Kirk's eyes welled up with tears, but he stayed intact, and she gestured around the set, saying, "This is closure, not for you, but for me." Kirk sat dumbfounded, speechless for the first time in years, and only a few clips from the entire set of footage from that shot were shown. Rita's quotes and some of Kirk's responses were made public, but even those tidbits shocked the fan base. Rita was praised for her strength and was called a role model. Women from all over the country shared stories about their breakups and moments when they regained control, but Kirk once again became quiet. Kirk Frost will be stepping away from the spotlight to focus on personal development and healing, his team said in a final statement. Perhaps it was a farewell, but one thing was for certain. Nothing will ever be the same, and there were still more secrets that needed to be revealed. Even after Kirk's declaration was made public, the fallout from his silence was still being felt by those closest to him. They knew that nothing was truly resolved, even though he was no longer in the spotlight, was turned down by the reality television industry, which had previously embraced his dramatic plot. Producers from Love and Hip Hop confirmed that Kirk would no longer make any significant appearances on the show. After his collapse, Kirk's crew continued to pursue his comeback strategy, and rumors circulated that a new series would document his road of atonement. However, many saw this as just another cunning attempt to profit from his mistakes, even though it sounded too good to be true. Kirk's crew stated that the goal was to show the public that he was able to transform and become the person he claimed to be, not just to make money. But it was clear that the audience had lost interest in his sob story because his fall from grace had been too dramatic. In contrast, Rasheeda's career was flourishing. Her business ventures were still flourishing, and she was being approached for high-profile partnerships as a woman who had survived a relationship and emerged stronger than before. She had gained millions of followers who were moved by her story. Kirk, who had once been the face of the franchise, was now a forgotten relic from a bygone era as public interest in him declined. His social media following shrank with each post and public declaration, and he clung to the past, making his attempts to remain relevant seem increasingly pitiful. Through her self-love, independence, and empowerment, she became a beacon of hope for women who had suffered abuse, showing them that they were capable of rebuilding their lives and regaining control. In a last-ditch attempt to salvage what little of his reputation he had left, Kirk posted a video on social media that was sincere, heartfelt, and filled with regret. He promised to do better after owning up to his mistakes and the hurt he had caused Rasheeda. But his remarks fell flat once more because his supporters had seen this side of him far too often. His career was now a cautionary tale, a warning of how easily stardom can fade away when devotion and trust are betrayed. It was a bitter pill for Kirk to swallow because, despite his repeated expressions of regret and promises to make things better, he could never fully restore the trust he had betrayed in Rasheeda and their family. In addition to losing his marriage, he also lost his job, his reputation, and his position in the reality TV industry. Although some fans moved on and showed their disinterest in his story, others simply voiced their disgust. Though the media's focus eventually shifted from their failing marriage to new scandals and personalities in the reality TV industry, Rasheeda had learned a priceless lesson: never accept anything less than what you are worthy of. The lesson was especially harsh for Kirk because atonement isn't always possible and actions speak louder than words. On the other hand, she was on her way, more resilient, astute, and resolute than before, leaving Kirk and his lies behind and continuing to rise above the turmoil. Was ultimately just one aspect of a much larger story about horrible public humiliation and the death of a once famous reality TV personality. But one thing was certain: even though Kirk may have had his moment in the spotlight, Rasheeda ultimately won. She took control of her story, turned her hardship into strength, and showed the world that she could succeed in any situation. What a powerful emotional roller coaster. We are all shocked by Kirk Frost's shocking outburst and subsequent collapse. We would like to know if you think Kirk's career is over or if there is still hope for him to return for more intense celebrity news drama in the latest news. Rasheeda clearly overcame everything and demonstrated what true resilience looks like. Is Kirk's history finally catching up with him, or do you think he will ever completely turn his life around? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. Updates from the reality TV sector. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the like button if you haven't already. Turn on notifications as normal to make sure you don't. Watch the video below to find out more about any stories that are making waves in the entertainment world. Ramifications of this occurrence and Kirk and Rasheeda's potential outcomes. Stay tuned as the story is far from over.